Good morning. Welcome to another Facebook Live episode with me, Big B, the anti-lawyer lawyer. Today, I'm going to provide my analysis of the fatality accident that involved the autonomous vehicle owned by Uber just occurred in Tempe, March 18th, this past Sunday. I believe it's going to be a hotly debated issue. I mean, it already is, but I think it's something going forward that will continue to be debated amongst the legislature and just society in general as it relates to the safety of these autonomous vehicles. But with this particular case, under these particular facts and circumstances, I wanted to provide my analysis. And in doing so, I think that there's four questions that should be answered. Is one, was the accident avoidable? Two, is Uber liable? Three, is the driver liable? And four, are autonomous vehicles, also known as AVs, something that we're going to see into the future? So was the accident avoidable? No. I think this was an unavoidable accident, and I'm going to tell you why. But it basically comes down to pure math, and we know from the investigation that the Tempe Police Department's already done. Their Chief Moore has come out and indicated that they believe the accident was unavoidable as well. But we'll look at it from some math. So we know that the accident happened on Mill Ave, coming up to the intersection of Curry, and then the road changes into Washington, the Marquee Theater, just to give some reference points. And this is my crude drawing of the scene of the accident. But we know that the Uber was in this far right-hand lane, and it was traveling approximately 40 miles an hour. And at the conclusion of this, we'll leave a comment with a link to an article by The Guardian, and it has the video within that article that you can watch so you can follow up on some of these facts to check my facts. So we know, just whenever you talk to a human factors expert, the amount of time it takes an intelligent human being under normal circumstances to perceive and react is anywhere from 0.3 to 3.0 seconds. So let's just take the midpoint of that of 1.5 seconds. So the analysis we need to use in this circumstance, I believe, is would this accident have been avoidable if a human was driving this particular vehicle instead of the vehicle being an autonomous vehicle? And so this is why I'm using these particular stats. And we'll get into the other analysis later, but for now, this is how I think it needs to be pursued. So under 40 miles an hour, we know 40 miles an hour, a vehicle is going 58.7 feet per second. Okay, so just looking at the math of it, 1.5 seconds. We know they're 40 miles an hour, that's 58.7 seconds. So let's look at the braking distance, okay? So when you watch the video, this is a very poorly lit area, and you can judge for yourself, but this is my analysis, is right around the late 6-7 second mark of the video, and the video doesn't have seconds, so I think it's as soon as the clock hits 7, arguably you see the pedestrian come in from the left. And again, it's very poorly lit. You can hardly even see this travel lane here from the video. And the first time you see the pedestrian, she's right about there. And again, I should have driven this car back, but you see the video and it starts maybe from the point of view of where one of the lines stops that separates traffic. We know the distance between lines is approximately 10 feet. I couldn't find the exact data of the length of the lines in Tempe, Arizona, but let's assume each dash is another 10 feet. And then we go another 10. So here we have 30 feet from the moment that, assuming a driver was operating the car, would have seen this particular pedestrian come in from the left and come into the line of sight on Mill Ave. Even if we want to say that this, let's be generous and say this is 40 feet. But when we go back to these stats, we know at 40 miles an hour, the vehicle's going 58.7 feet per second. Off of these measurements, even if we're generous, it's unlikely that a human operating that vehicle would have perceived and reacted, meaning perceived the danger, and then the reaction would be the braking within enough time to even come close to avoiding this accident, because the vehicle's going 58.7 feet per second. So the driver of this vehicle, what it tells us is the driver of this vehicle, an attentive human under these set of circumstances, would have made contact with the pedestrian even before that individual was able to apply the brakes. So even if you go and increase the reaction time, or I should say decrease the reaction time to more favorable, say to 1 second, well, even under a 1 second reaction time, we're still at 58.7 feet per second. So the amount of time from 40 miles an hour it takes a vehicle to come to a complete stop would be 164 feet. Now this analysis is given every benefit of the doubt, and as you'll watch the video, you'll see it's dark, it's dimly lit, and so there's other factors at play that arguably, if better, could have prevented this accident from happening. But again, when we analyze this case under this facts and circumstances, I believe the accident was unavoidable. So question 2 is Uber at fault? And that becomes a little bit more complicated. I think the short answer in today, where we're at today with this as far as regulations and the legislature goes, Uber likely won't be at fault because the accident was unavoidable. But again, we don't have all the facts, right? As these vehicles operate under a pedestrian imminent braking system and a crash imminent braking system. So what that means is the car is equipped with sensors and radars that are supposed to pick up various objects, obviously pedestrians, small animals, large animals, and then automatically apply the brakes. So was the technology that Uber implemented within this Volvo, because they purchased the Volvo and then Uber's the one who actually made it an autonomous vehicle, was it the best that they possibly could get their hands on under today's technology to make it the safest it can? If that answer is no, they maybe should have had better lighting on the vehicle, maybe the radars weren't up to snuff, the sensors weren't, then arguably Uber could be liable as it relates to that, because then that would be more of a product's liability case. Did the product Uber put into the stream of commerce, was it dangerous? And when we analyze that, again, from the forest perspective, instead of getting lost within the forest for the trees, again, if they didn't utilize everything to the best potential it could have been, then arguably they could be liable. But I think the short answer is no. So then the third question is the driver liable? Again, I think it just goes back to the analysis I just gave as it relates to the reaction time. Obviously, when you watch the video, you see that the driver behind the wheel is looking down, not paying attention. But again, we're talking about the vehicle being an autonomous vehicle, so there's no real laws or regulations in place now, at least I'm aware of, that says that if you're occupying the driver position in an AV, that your duties are X and Y. So again, it's a little bit of a Wild West situation where we're still trying to hone everything in to figure out exactly how it'll work. So then the fourth question is, are AVs something of the future? I think that they are going to be something that we see more of. Just looking off of pure stats, in Arizona in 2016, the fatalities involving vehicles were 962, and out of those, 232 involved drivers driving under the influence. So that's 26% of fatalities that could have arguably been prevented if AVs were being utilized, again, obviously across the board. But again, it's not a perfect system. So these AVs might have issues in and of themselves that aren't prevalent, obviously, within human perception reaction that causes them to somehow cause fatalities like it did in this case. So, but again, if we look at it within a vacuum, everything else being equal, we would hope that the roads would become safer, which is the ultimate goal. But how do we make them safer? I think this is, again, it's going to come down to a technology. Under these facts and circumstances here, you could argue that the city maybe had a duty to have better lighting. Now, if AVs are prevalent, does that change the cities and municipalities' duties as it relates to lighting? If they had more lighting here, then maybe the sensors and the radars of that AV would have picked up the pedestrian better, sooner, and way to have prevented it. But then that begs the question, how fast should these AVs be braking? Obviously, they can't brake at a neck-breaking speed that would make occupying that AV unsafe. So then it becomes an argument of diminishing returns, is how much safety features within that vehicle, make it safe for everybody outside the vehicle as well as people inside the vehicle. Are the safety restraints within the vehicle going to have to be changed because of this? Are the positioning of seats going to change? I think these are all things that we're going to see evolve over time. Arguably, when we started trying to put people on the moon, there was accidents with the takeoff of the different ships that went up there, and people unfortunately passed away. So I think this is just a process of hopefully moving through some of these hiccups that end up making it safer for everybody in the end, but I still think there's a lot of questions that has to be answered. I think there's a lot of research. I think there's a lot of legislation that has to get in place before we have a clear-cut answer to this question. But as it relates to the one that happened in Tempe, that's my 2 cents on it. If you have any questions, comments, please post them. I'll do my best to answer them. Like I said, we'll post the link after this video where you can go and check out the video for yourself. And then please tune in March 30th, next Friday, 11 a.m. for another Facebook Live. Tag your friends, share this video, and until then, this is Big B, the anti